Welcome back, fellow Homo sapiens, to another episode of Gender Bender, a podcast where we debunk myths, fill your head with knowledge, and make you question everything. I'm Flynn.
And I'm Jules. First, we would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are recording today and pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging in the hope of reconciliation.
So in the last episode, Jules told us about the biological construct of sex, so if you haven't, we suggest you giving it a listen before this one because it is helpful to help understand this one. But getting back into the episode, today we will be discussing gender.
Just like in the last episode, before we start, we'd like to put out a sensitivity warning. As always, we'll be discussing potentially sensitive topics in this podcast, and it can be confronting for some people. So if you need to pause the episode, take some time, or skip over any part, feel free to do so.
So first and foremost, we're going to start with the basics. So what is gender? Gender, in its simplest terms, is a social construct that uses labels to define individuals' identity. The most common labels known are women/female and man/male.
However, sex and gender are very different concepts, although there is a large influence on each other.
Gender is non-binary, and as a social construct, there is a multitude of genders, including gender-neutral, non-binary, agender, pangender, queer gender, two-spirits, third gender, and all and none of these combined. Seeing as there's so many, we don't have time to define all of them today, but we definitely encourage you to search them up and do your own research on them. So it seems like there's such a widespread amount of gender, like pretty much everything you could ever think of. And this is, as we mentioned before, gender is a social construct, meaning it's not an actual physical thing. Instead, it's culturally and historically specific, internally contradictory, and amendable to change, which just means it's there to dictate people, pretty much.
Because this is such a wide topic, I'm so excited to see the myths that we're going to break today.
Yes, I'm very excited to get into them. Let's just get straight to it. So our first myth, drumroll please, Jules, is that sex informs gender. Thank you, that was very nice, Jules.
Thank you.
So for this section, I will be focusing on the two binary sexes of female and male, as they are the most dominantly accepted in both sex and gender, which are the two that are pushed onto us growing up, and they're two genders that I'm sure that you have all been categorized as at one point in your life. So as I said before, gender and sex are different things, but people always believe and we are taught that they are the same and that your sex is equivalent to your gender. But think about it, how could whether you have a penis or a vagina influence your personality and determine what activities and things you enjoy? As we keep mentioning, when we think of gender, we usually think of the stereotypes related to each gender, from what societal expectations and exceptions of different sexes are. These stereotypes are where the myth stems from. If you're born with female organs, you must like pink, play with dolls, and be docile.
Obviously.
Yeah, of course. Or if you're born with male organs, you are destined to love sports and be stone cold with your emotions.
Big boy.
Yeah. So sex and gender are often spoken about together and misused interchangeably, as they are both used to control groups of people.
So coming back to that social construct.
Yeah, exactly. It just all comes back to that, and it's just all kind of made up. So no, your sex does definitely not inform your gender. For example, if you're a female, your gender does not have to be female. Having different gender to your sex is most commonly recognised under the gender label of transgender people, but it's not exclusive to that.
Ooh, that's nice to know. On to our second myth of the episode.
Yes, our second myth is that one gender is more important than the others. Which sounds kind of dumb, right? Like, it sounds like a myth I just made up.
Yeah, a little.
Yeah. But if I rephrase it into something that you might be more familiar with, such as the gender pay gap or lack of trans rights, it becomes a lot easier to understand in our world. So we're going to talk about this briefly, as it really needs a whole series to unpack fully because it's such a large topic. But I thought it was important to mention to ensure that going away from this episode, everyone feels validated in their self-identity. But this myth really stems from why gender roles are still pushed in today's society and how they were developed. And get ready to be shocked, it was so that white cis men could uphold the patriarchy.
Go Taylor Swift.
I love Taylor Swift. I know, it's shocking. You wouldn't expect it. Stereotypes surrounding different genders coincidentally line up with the skills, abilities, and interests needed to uphold the current society and ensure there's no shift in power away from cis men.
Obviously.
Yeah, of course. But realistically, no matter who you identify as, it does not change your value as a human. Everyone is still human and should be loved, respected, and given equal rights accordingly. Once again, gender is just a made-up idea, but unfortunately, the way it is made up gives an unfair advantage to some genders. However, that doesn't make it right or withstanding.
So if gender is a social construct and doesn't define your ability or worth, why is it important? As in, why don't we get rid of genders altogether? It would be less confusing and help prevent hate targeted at different groups, right?
I'm so glad you asked that, Jules, because it's true. In a perfect world, there's no need for gender labels. Unfortunately, we do not live in a perfect world, and in this world, labels are very important. They can create a sense of community and allow individuals to feel as though they belong. But more importantly, in society, we use labels in our legislation, which is our lawmaking.
Yeah.
To ensure everyone truly does have equal rights, we have to mention them by name in our society's legal documents. We have to band together under different labels and banners to progress certain movements forward.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So before we leave our little episode for today, our fun fact is that animals do not have a gender. And as today was a very short introduction to gender, if this episode has left you with any questions and you love a good TED Talk, I would recommend to watch Understanding the Complexities of Gender by Sam Killerman. Or if you want to know more about genders in society, the YouTube video Theories of Gender, Crash Course Sociology number 33, explains it in more detail. If this episode has left you feeling uneasy with your feelings, please visit Lifeline Australia and speak to a consultant. All will be linked in the description below. Thank you for listening today. Bye.
Bye.